All right, guys. So, equipment vlog number 1 coming at you live. So, we got some stuff to test today. Gonna kind of take you guys through my testing, kind of how I go about, trying different equipment. But before we even get into what we have to test today, let's kind of talk about why we're testing today, what we're testing, and etc. So, let's kind of give you a little bit of background here. I have been a drawer of the golf ball pretty much since I came out of the womb. That is just what I do. I turn that baby from right to left. Always have, always probably will. Kind of used to play that very soft, middled, stiff tip Modus 120. Had some success with that. Also had some success with X100s. The person I was working with coaching wise, for a few years, a while back, had me move away from those shafts. Thought it would be better to move into something with a stiffer middle, softer tip section. And the idea there was because you got that softer tip section that's lagging behind you, the golf ball, the face is going to stay more open and the golf ball is going to go more right, which in theory would help me to not overdraw the golf ball. And so I played Nippon Modus Tour 130s for probably the last, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years I've kind of played them. But, the issue I found with the Modus 130 is because of that soft tip section, the ball wouldn't consistently draw. And for me, at the end of the day, well, another thing that I'll mention before I even get into this, something I think I'm pretty decent at is short game, and I could not chip with the Modus 130, so that's another thing that I did not like particularly. But big thing I think in this game that is super important is consistency. It's a very inconsistent game. Inconsistent lies, inconsistent wind, inconsistent weather, greens, pins, you name it. It's very inconsistent, but the one thing we can do as players is we can chase consistency. And the problem with the Modus 130 is some shots would be tight draws, other shots would leak out to the right because the soft tip section would keep the face open. And so it was just a struggle. And so yes, that shaft helped negate the draw, too much of a draw, but it also became bad because now we have no consistency. Some shots fade, some shots draw. It just was a mess. So, the one thing I haven't loved about like an X100 in years past is they are hard to swing. They're heavy, they're stiff, they're not super easy to swing. And so I kind of came up with a theory over the last, 6-8 months probably, of moving to a KBS sort of profile. Very linear, not really soft or stiff throughout, just kind of very straight on EI. When you think Modus 130, it's stiff, 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 soft. When you think of X1, it's soft, 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 stiff. And then you got KBS, which is kind of very straight. And so my theory was, okay, well, I struggled with Modus 130. X100, I wouldn't say I ever really struggled with it, but, it just was hard to swing occasionally. It's heavy, it's stiff. So I was like, I'm just going to go to the middle ground. I'm going to go to KBS, and this is going to be great. It's going to be, not too far one way or the other. I can draw it, fade it, no problem. Well, that's kind of the issue I have found with the KBS, is it wants to go straight. And, the issue with that is, once again, don't know where to aim. It's not sure if I should aim 15 feet right of the hole, 15 feet left of the hole. Sometimes it draws, sometimes it fades. There's just no consistency for me. Very good to chip with, very fun to swing, very easy to swing, but it's just the consistency for me is just not there. So, another thing I'll mention is over the last probably year and a half, I kind of decided to go to a fade. I decided to try to get away from the draw and try to start fading the golf ball. I thought it would lead to more consistency. A lot of good players fade the golf ball. to me it seemed like it would just be more controllable, but once again, really just fighting my natural tendencies. So, like over the last 5 or 6 days, I just decided I'm done with this. My game has been very, very good at times, but also very inconsistent. It's hard to describe. It's just been sometimes I'm striping it, sometimes I don't know where the hell it's gonna go. So basically, over the last 5 or 6 days, I decided to go back to the draw, full time, committing to it. I have a draw golf swing. I don't know why I've been trying to fight it all these years. I think you're always chasing, trying to be better, and so in turn, you start to do things that you think are gonna make you better. You start to go down these roads, but you have to get back to what you know and what works. And so that's kind of what I've decided over the last few days. Another thing I'll mention is that modern drivers are not super easy to turn over. You have CGs that are far out from the shaft axis. You have CGs that are very rearward. And, they're just not super easy to turn. And you have low lofts. Once you get below 9 degrees loft, it's hard to turn the golf ball over. The golf ball doesn't spin. To draw a driver consistently, you probably need 26 to 2,800 RPMs of spin. So, I've been working on finding a driver that draws, and kind of ultimately have made the decision to go back into a softer middle, stiffer tip section profile. So in terms of what I'm going to be kind of testing here in the next few weeks is going to be X100s, the 130 gram model, 120 X100s, Dynamic Gold 120 X100s, Modus 115X. You might wonder why not try the 125X, which is the same profile. I've tried the 125X. For me, I've not been a huge fan of it because of their heat treatment they do to the shafts. To me, it just makes them feel very boardy, and it's just not been something I love in the 125 gram model. But the 115 with the heat treatment isn't super boardy, just because it's a little bit lighter, a little bit softer. So we'll be testing those. And then next week, we're probably going to pick up some of the Nippon Regio Formula MB Pluses. We're going to test it in the driver and kind of see how it goes. And what I love about Nippon, and something I'm a big proponent of, is profile matching. And something really cool that Nippon does is they have pretty much 3 profiles. You've got your Modus 130, stiff middle, soft tip. You've got your Modus 120, very soft middle, very stiff tip. And then you've got your Modus 105, 115, 125, which is softer middle, stiffer tip, but not as exaggerated as the 120 gram model. But what they do is they make wood shafts that match up profile-wise to the irons. Like I just said a second ago, I'm a big proponent of profile matching. I think once again, kind of, talking about consistency, profile matching is awesome because you're having a consistent profile from your wedge all the way up to your driver. Same release patterns, same swing for the most part, and you're going to get a consistent result from wedge all the way to driver. It's very tough when, say, you have a Ventus black in your driver and then a Ventus red in your 3-wood to kick it up, because the driver wants to stay with you and keep the face closed, and the red wants to kind of stay behind you and keep the face open to kick the golf ball up in the air. So, you're fighting inconsistency in profiles when you do stuff like that. And for me, I just, that's not something that I'm a huge fan of. I think if you want to hit it higher, you add loft. When I hit it lower, you take loft away. You don't really use shaft to try to manipulate that. So I kind of find one profile, which for me right now is going to be that sort of X100 profile, and then I'm trying to find stuff to match up to that. So the MB Plus, what I'm getting at here is the MB Plus is going to be the wood shaft match to the X100 profile. A Modus 125 and an X100 have the exact same profile. The only real difference is going to be how they're made. Obviously, Nippon's made in Japan. I believe X100s are made in China, maybe the US. I think in China. So you're going to have the way they're made, but the profile is the same. Then you also have the heat treatment. And then the MB Plus, because it matches up to the Modus 125, it also matches up to the X100. So we're going to be testing that next week. But for today, specifically, on the agenda, we are going to be testing 4 different things. We have Tour AD UB 6X and 7X. 6X in the driver, 7X in the 3-wood. I got fit for the UBs, I think back in September of last year when I got fit for the TSR stuff with Titleist. And I really like the UBs. The only issue that I think we're going to run into with the UBs right now is I think they're going to be too light and soft. So for me, because I want to go back to the draw, I need stuff that is stiff. Stiff draws the golf ball. Soft keeps the golf ball out to the right. So, all right, guys. So after kind of going back and looking over the video, I noticed a couple things that I did a poor job of talking about in terms of curve and why it happens. Now, when I talk about, and you'll kind of notice this as we go on to the video, when I talk about how a player reacts to where a golf ball is struck on the face, I'm talking more so about things that are not equipment related. Or things that are related more so to clubs that aren't influenced necessarily as much by how they're made, like blades. But something that I kind of failed to talk about that is very important when it comes to woods is gear effect. So gear effect is essentially when the golf club, if you tow it, let's say, the golf club will twist open and it will twist basically from left to right. And the golf ball will then twist from right to left. That is what gear effect is, in short. So if you tow one and it draws, basically gear effect is causing that. And vice versa. If you heel one, the face will close, so it will twist close, and then the golf ball will actually twist the opposite way and cut back. So gear effect plays a pretty significant role in why the golf ball will curve. But in addition, there are other factors. I think that any half-decent player that tows one will feel that club face open and they will flip to save it, as I kind of talk about later in the video. And additionally, if you tow it way off the toe, like miles off the toe, gear effect will not help you. It will not help it come back. It will just go straight right. Again, something you'll see that I talk about later in the video. But important to clarify, when a golf ball curves, it's not 100% a player's reaction to it. It's also just how golf clubs are made. So, it's something I wanted to clarify and talk about. Also, something I'll kind of talk about here in a second, you'll notice, is, a lot of times people will mention, hey, I hit a shot, and because the shaft's too soft, it overcurved. Well, it's not the softness of the shaft that made it necessarily overcurve. It can be how you're reacting to it. So if it's too soft, it's going to lag behind you. It's going to start out to the right, and you might react by flipping your hands, try to get it to come back. So it might hook, especially if we're talking about irons. Additionally, softness of shaft will push your path further out to the right. And the more rightward your path is in relation to a closed face, the more it's going to hook. And additionally, the softer the shaft is, the more likely you are to tow it. And like I just said a second ago, gear effect, can play a role in making a draw when you tow it. So there's so many different factors at play when it comes to, why the golf ball will curve. You got shaft weight, shaft flex, impact spot, spin rate, loft. I mean, there's probably something I'm not even thinking of that I forgot to mention, but there's so many different things that play a role. The center of gravity is another thing. But yeah, something I talk about a lot in the video is how a player reacts to where a golf ball is struck on the face. And, that's stuff that is outside of equipment. It's not stuff that is, if we're talking everything the same, what is this equipment causing? But we're talking about what a player feels, and because of what they feel, how they react to that feeling. So lots of different factors at play, but long story short, hopefully I don't get flamed in the comments. But it's not just how a player reacts that makes the golf ball curve. There's a lot of different factors at play. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. You know, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about, oh, the shaft's too soft, that's why it's drawing too much. Well, that's just not really true. You know, when you have something that's soft, it stays behind you, it kicks the face open, and it starts the golf ball further out to the right. It keeps the face open. So if you ever hear somebody say, oh, it's too soft, and that's why I overdraw the golf ball, what's happening is it's not the softness that's making the golf ball draw. It's your reaction to it. So usually what happens with people is they feel the golf ball is going to go too far right, and so they flip to save it, and so they hook it, but it's not the softness of the shaft that makes it hook. It's your reaction to it. So if you want to draw the golf ball, stiffer's going to stay with you. It's going to keep the face more closed. Usually you're going to live, I would say, more off the heel, if anything. And, you know, when you hit a golf ball off the heel, let's say, you know, this is the heel, you're going to hold this part back, and it's going to want to kind of swing the toe shut. And then vice versa. If it's soft, you hit it off the toe, it's going to want to push this back and kind of hold the face more open and out to the right. So the reason I bring this up is because the UB 6X and 7X, in my opinion, are probably going to be too soft. I think the 6X and the driver is just going to be a little bit too light and soft. I think the 7X and the 3-wood is probably, once again, going to be a little bit too light and soft. But nonetheless, we're going to get out there and test it. Now, I've hit the driver, and I can draw it. I also put the weight in the H2 setting, so heel 2. So it's definitely drawable, but I also noticed a couple shots kind of want to stay out to the right. And I found the 7X UB today in the garage, and I figured I'm just going to throw it in the 3-wood and see how it goes. So technically I've already hit the driver, and it's decent, not exactly what I want. I think we need the 7X or 7TX in the driver. And then today we'll test the 7X in the 3-wood, and we'll see how it goes. So that's the first thing we got to test. The next thing we've got to test, yesterday I picked up Cobra CB MB combo set, traded with somebody, which I'm very excited about. Another thing that I'm going to be going back to is blades. Gotten away from blades in the last few years. Keep thinking, oh, more forgiving, it's going to be better. My ball striking stats have gotten way worse. My distance to the hole stats have gotten worse. I've missed more greens without blades. Like, it's just been a mess. So I'm going back to blades. I really want to play them 5-through pitching wedge, because that's kind of what I've always played, and then I've played a little bit more forgiving 4-iron. The set I picked up is 4.56 CB, 7-through pitching wedge MB with S300. So not the exact shaft I'd play, but the profile is pretty much right in line with an X100, just a little bit softer. So it should give us a pretty good idea as to whether I like the heads or not. I was able to hit them inside a couple days ago, and I really liked them. That's why I found somebody to trade with. But I have not hit them outside yet, so I'm very excited to do that. That should be really fun. And the last thing we have on the agenda today is testing the new Mizuno T24 wedges. So just got those a couple days ago, and I've been messing with the denim copper V-grind. Really like it. I think that is so cool that Mizuno decided to offer a V-grind this year. In my opinion, Vokey kind of screwed the pooch a little bit with the V-grind. I think that should be offered at retail. It's not something that should be a limited release, which is what it is a limited release through Wedgeworks. So I think it was smart for Mizuno to capitalize on that by actually offering that at retail. We've got 3 finishes in the T24s. We've got denim copper, which is just so sick. Honestly, although I have been gaming the denim copper 58 V-grind the last few days, it's really just been to test the grind. That finish is so cool. I think it belongs on a shelf. I do not think that is something that belongs in the bag. It's too pretty. Just like the blue 221s. I mean, they're so pretty. They look incredible, but like just not as gamers. Like they just belong in a display case. But nonetheless, we've got denim copper this year. We've got raw, which is probably the finish I would game. And then we also have soft white satin, which is just a beautiful satin finish. And in my opinion, probably the best satin finished golf club of 2023. It's perfect. There's no glare. It's beautifully just brushed. It looks incredible. So 3 finishes this year. We've got 5 grinds. We've got an SV, XD, and SV, XD, and C. So 5 different grinds, 46 through 60 degree. We also have Dynamic Gold Tour Issue S400s as the stock shafts in the T24s, which is just phenomenal. And Golf Pride multi-compound port grips. So you're looking at like a $35 to $50 upcharge usually for most companies for those 2 options, and Mizuno's offering it stock. So, you know, the way I look at it is it's pretty much, if you bought a wedge for $130, that's what the upcharges would be. You'd probably have a $50 upcharge, which would take it to the $180 retail cost of the new T24. So I think that's great. I think if anything, you know, if you're between Mizuno's and something else, honestly, you're getting more value out of the Mizuno. But nonetheless, so far, I like it. I think the V-grind's really solid. I think they look great. I think the look is improved over the T22s. Those were just very rounded to me. I didn't love the look. Very small head. The new T24 is still a smaller head, but I think a little bit less rounded as you get into the sand and gap wedges, which looks better. And then another thing they've done this year in the T24s is they have messed with the design of the face a little bit. So we have a slightly different groove pattern in the lob wedges. So I guess 58 and 60 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. We have 15 grooves, which allows for a little bit more flat surface area, which is supposed to help with getting the golf ball to grab a little bit easier, a little bit rougher, I guess, since there's more flat face area. And so theoretically, the T24s are going to be a little bit better on partial shots. And then in the gap and sand wedges, we have 17 grooves on the face, so 15 versus 17. And supposedly that will be better for, you know, when you're actually cutting into the turf and you're in rough and stuff. It's going to help get debris away from the impact spot because there's more grooves. And then also, the grooves on the lob wedges are angled. So the way the, I don't even know, I guess micro grooves? I could be completely screwing this up, but micro grooves are, some part of the groove is angled. So theoretically speaking, when the face is open, the grooves will be square. So the whole idea there is, since you're going to be usually opening the face a lot on your lob wedges, you don't necessarily need straight milling or straight grooves. You actually need it at more of an angle. So when you cut across it, it creates more spin than it would if the milling or grooves were straight. And then in the gap and sand wedges, they're straight because you're going to be hitting more straight face golf shots. So that's a big thing they've done. They've also done a little bit of a wet weather treatment in the T24s. Now, like I said, I've messed with the denim copper V-grind, and I have messed with it actually in wet conditions, and if we're being completely honest, I don't really notice it to be all that special in wet weather. Certainly not like a Glide 4.0 or what I think the MG4s are going to be like. I've not tested the MG4s in depth quite yet, but I do have a feeling those are going to be really solid in wet weather. I don't think the T24s are bad in wet weather conditions. I just didn't think it was like anything to write home about, personally. But yeah, that's the T24s. The other big thing they're touting is they are now grain flow forged. I don't believe the T22s were grain flow forged, but the T24s are grain flow forged, if I'm not mistaken. So theoretically, they should feel closer to that of the Mizuno Pro line. And we kind of talked about consistency earlier in this video. I think that's a big thing. If you can get a consistent feel between your irons and your wedges, it's going to be easier to have better distance control, better feels around the greens, etc. So I think that is a good thing. And as far as the UB, you might be wondering, why are we testing the UB if I, was so kind of excited about the MB and it, being profile matched to the X100, which is the shaft that I think I'm going to move into. Well, the thing about Graphite design, I don't know what this guy's doing. He's going really slow. The thing about Graphite design is pretty much all of their shafts, and what I love about Graphite Design is pretty much all of their shafts follow the exact same profile. Slightly soft mid into a stiffer tip section, so very X100 style. Now obviously there's outliers. You've got like CQ, which is, you know, not quite that profile whatsoever, but when we're talking like the main Graphite Design profiles like DI, UB, IZ, TP, XC, like they all follow that very sort of mid-soft, stiff tip profile. And the only real differences are just slight variances in the stiffness of the handles and the tips and the middles, but like as a whole, the profiles are very similar amongst pretty much the entire Graphite Design lineup. So that is why we are messing with the UB, because it is pretty much that exact profile, and in my opinion, it is the best feeling Graphite Design shaft that I've ever tested. I think they are all really solid shafts. The quality is incredible, and obviously anything that's made in Japan is incredible quality. They all feel very good, but to me the UB has stood out in terms of feel, which is why we are testing it, and why I think that's the one I'm probably going to end up playing. So yeah, getting out to the golf course here shortly. I'm excited. Let's get to testing. All right, guys, so I think the way we're going to work through this here is we're going to start with the MBs and then kind of work our way up into the CBs. You know, just kind of give you guys my thoughts as we, you know, work up through the set. So, got the pitching wedge here, and like I said, S300s in these, so not perfect, but the profiles, you know, going to give us a pretty decent idea. In terms of looks, these look phenomenal. So the first time I was able to hit these was back at the PGA show. Unfortunately, we don't really have any sort of relationship set up with Cobra, so I haven't been able to do anything beyond that, but I was able to hit these at the golf store, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 days ago, maybe. No, maybe like 3 or 4 days ago, and I really liked them, so made the trade for these. In terms of looks, they look great. A little bit smaller head size, but they look really good. This is a pitching wedge here. And they feel very good too. I mean, shaft's a little bit soft, but it's kind of what we anticipated, I would say, coming in. So that's not a huge surprise. Oh, these feel so good. I think Cobra stuff is so underrated. I mean, just for some reason they don't really get a bad rap. They just don't really get the respect they deserve, I would say. That was toey, but the turf interaction's really good. More of like a low draw here. Solid, a little bit low on the face, but I'm trying to hit more of like a low cut. It wasn't really low, but it cut. So far, so good. I think we'll move on up into the 7-iron. I mean, yeah, really good start. Toey. But man, these feel superb. And the turf interaction's really very solid. Try to hit one a little bit more centered. That was really good. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just hitting these, like, these have to be the best feeling MBs I've tested. I don't know, in probably the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, right up there with like 221s. You know, dare I say that maybe they even feel a little bit better than the 221s. They feel amazing. Turf interaction is really good. The soles are the right width. They're narrower, and then they have a little bit of trail edge relief, which is just awesome. Awesome. Like, I don't really know why I went away from blades. So I switched into the Dell SMS Pros, and you know, those were solid, but just the sole width and the fact that they had a leading edge grind, it just made it a little bit of a struggle to get into the ground, which is not something that is, you know, something I prefer for my game. I really like to feel like that club cuts into the ground. So I do like narrower soles, and that's, I think, a reason why I've been a bigger proponent of going back into blades, because I feel like I can just be aggressive through the impact, you know, zone or spot or whatever, you know, and I'm not going to get any sort of resistance, if that makes sense. So hit a couple more with this 7-iron. That was low in the face, a little bit spinny, but I mean, the flight's there. Tight draw. Yeah, it's spinny, but I mean, it's to be expected. You know, you hit a blade low in the face, it's gonna spin. Go for a low draw here. And that's what I love about blades. You can move these things. We'll go for like a high cut. I chugged the living piss out of that, but let's see if we can actually hit one decent. High cut. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of a blade. Try to do one like more hold-offy, so like same sort of draw swing, but we'll try to hold the face and make it go a little bit straighter. We got wind going off the left here, so yeah, and that went dead straight. So these are, I'm liking these a lot. Now the real question becomes, where do we go into the CB? Do we start it at the 6, or do we go start it at the 4? You know, right now we have the CBs in the 6.54. So I guess we'll go to the 4, and then we can kind of work our way back. Move over a little bit. So this is the 4-iron. I mean, definitely looks small, but to be expected. Dude, I mean, these feel so effing good. Oh my goodness, dude, these feel good. I mean, that was about as center as you could hit a 4-iron. Not to, you know, toot my own horn. These are so good. There's just no way. I don't think there's any way I'm gonna play anything else. I think it's gonna be Cobra 2023 Cobra MBs, at least 7 through pitching wedge. I'm thinking maybe 5, 6 through pitching wedge, and then we'll debate on the 6 and 5 iron. 4-iron is definitely going to be the CB, I think. Let's hit the 6-iron CB. Now, definitely a little bit wider sole on the CBs than the MBs, which I don't hate, because you're not necessarily attacking the ground with like a 6, 5, 4-iron. But with that being said, definitely not the 4-iron. But the question is, like, the 6 and 5-iron, am I going to want to be more, down into the turf? So we'll hit the 6, I suppose. But in terms of, like,
how these match up, like top line wise, like with the MB is definitely a little thicker. You know, you could definitely, to me, you could tell this is a CB, not an MB, but they blend pretty darn well. I mean, the turf interaction stays good with the 6-iron. I think for right now, it's going to be one of those things where I just play these because it's what I have. I play we'll rebuild the shafts and whatnot. We'll figure the shafts out at some point, but I think we'll go 654 CB, 7 pitching wedge MB, and then if there's issues in tournaments or rounds, then I think we'll go and we'll try to mess with it and figure it out. But yeah, these are so good. I really hope at some point in the future we can kind of develop a little bit of a relationship with Cobra, because they make some great stuff. The Aerojet LS is such a good driver. These irons are so good. So you got the King Tours, which is what Fowler's playing, and those are fantastic. Kind of that player's distance design. Then you got these CBs and MBs. I would argue these are the best CBs and MBs on the market right now. I really would. The lofts are really good. The look's fantastic. The feel's amazing. I mean, turf interaction superb. Man, very solid. Another with the 6-iron. Toey. But I mean, it's getting me the flight I want, and I think that at some point that's all you can ask for. I think these are an improvement over what I was gaming. Not that the irons I was gaming were bad, but these just, to me, these are just better. Go for like a low cut here. Yeah. Kind of a push cut. High draw. A little low in the face, but high draw. Very solid. Shafts are a little heavy. I'm really liking the idea of like a DG 120x100, a little bit lighter, but same profile. Pretty much, when you look at it on EI, it matches up stiffness-wise in the tip with the X1. The only real difference is going to be the butt section's a little softer. But moving into our next thing, the thing about the UB is same profile as the X1 sort of style, but slightly softer butt, a little bit better feeling. So, like I told you guys earlier, 7X in the 3-wood, I think we'll kind of know just by like waggling it. It feels very light to me, so I don't think it's probably gonna work. But you know, we'll hit some shots. We'll see. I mean, there's wind holding it up right. That was a hair toey. So what I don't want to do to get these to draw is I don't want to have to toe them. So like I mentioned earlier, and if you toe something, it's going to hold this part of the club back and it's going to whip the face open, right? So if I toe it, it wants to go right. Now, the reason you'll see toe snipes is because of the reaction to it. The player feels like it's going to go right, and then they flip it to make sure that it doesn't go, you know, 6,000 yards to the right. And vice versa with the heel. If I heel it, you know, it tends to want to hold this part of the face back and shut it. So you'll hit here and it'll shut the face. So now you can hit toe draws. The only issue with a toe draw is because usually of where the center of gravity is, if you hit it like high toe, you'll hit one with no spin. So when you're going to draw the golf ball, you don't want to hit shots with no spin, because that's where that toe snipe comes in. Now, you ever see somebody hit one, you know, that's just a complete toe snipe with a 3-wood or driver, you know, the spin will drop to like 1,600, so the ball can't stay in the air. So, like, if I can get this to draw, but the question is, can I get it to draw off the center, or do I have to toe it to get it to draw? like that drew, but I'm living off the toe. And so that has no spin on it, and spin is control. So that's the thing about playing these lighter ones that I'm just not quite sure of. And just after hitting a few shots, like I can tell, I don't think the 7X is gonna work. I just think it's gonna be too toe biased. And you can tell the softness. I mean, I hit behind that, maybe because I suck, or maybe just because it's too soft, you know? But like I'm trying to explain to you guys, toe wants to go right. The reason these are drawing is because I'm reacting to it. If I don't react to it, this thing is going to go into 18 fairway. So like I'll hit one where I don't react to it, or try not to. No reaction to it. Do you see how far right that went? Because of just the impact spot on the face, if I take this and I hit it toe, it's whipping that face right open. But yeah, I mean, just by after hitting a few shots, to me, this feels too light and soft. I think it's going to be either 8TX or 8X tipped a ½ inch, more than likely. Shaft feels great. It's just a little too light and a little bit too soft. That's all. Try to hit one more center. And that was more center, but you can see it wants to go straight. It doesn't want to draw because it's not stiff enough. So that's 3-wood. Not bad, but kind of what I explained to you guys. A little bit too light and soft. All right, now we got T24s, 5612S. So this is the grind I would play. I've moved away from the T grind. In my 60, I actually now play 5610S and a 6010S in my Vokies. So I would play the 12S in this, and then they don't actually make an S in the 60, unfortunately, in the T24s. But they make a V, so like if I was gonna game T24s, I'd probably game the V. But just looking at this, definitely better shape. It's not as rounded in the sand wedges, which is so much better. The offset looks really good. Just really good looking wedge. We'll hit some shots with it. We'll try to hit a couple like 80 yards-ish. I don't have a launch monitor, but it felt 80. It feels really good. I mean, to me, it feels like the 221s, is the way I would describe it. And I guess that's kind of the whole idea, you know, to an extent, behind the new, I think it's the new forging process, like grain flow, forging, and the wedges. Yeah, I mean, the feel's good. And the grind's good too. Turf interaction, very solid. We're gonna hit some chips here. We'll move over to the chipping green and kind of try to hit some different shots. But just in terms of like initial thoughts, hitting these more full. Like I'll hit one, you know, pretty full here. I mean, really good. They feel awesome. Flight's good, turf interaction's good. You know, I mean, to an extent, it's a wedge, you know. Wedges are all made pretty darn similarly, so it's not like we're gonna see any crazy difference. We shouldn't, at least. But, you know, that's more of like a cut spinner. See that thing shoot off to the right. You know, we could hit like a draw. I like it a lot. The finish is so well done. That soft white satin is just superb. Shaping's good. Backing looks better. I think they're an improvement. We'll go over and chip now, but just after hitting some shots, very pleased. All right, guys, so we moved over to the chipping green here, and unfortunately in the sample wedges from Mizuno, we didn't get any 60 degrees, but you know what they say, if you got hands, you know, you don't need a 60 degree. So, and whether I have hands or not is probably debatable, but we've got the 5612S, 5810V, and we're just gonna kind of hit some different chip shots. Now, like I mentioned earlier, they don't make the S in a 60 or 58, which kind of sucks, but I think we're gonna start with the 56, because this is the grind I would use. I guess I would have to use the V in the lob wedge, because that's how they make. But we'll kind of hit some different shots here, and just kind of see how they go. I mean, the feel is very good. Like, I'm not gonna like sit here and say, oh my goodness, they feel the best wedges I've ever felt in my life. No, I don't think that, but they feel very solid. You know, I even tested the T22s in depth enough to really be able to tell you they feel better than the T22s, but I would say, if anything, they very unlikely you're going to think they feel worse. And, you know, the reason... That was horrendous. The reason I moved away from the T grind in my 60 is for a few reasons, and we'll talk more in depth about stuff probably in future videos, but really the thing you gotta understand about more bounce is it's more protection, right? So when it gets soft, when you're in fluffy bunkers, when you're in deep rough, it's just giving you more protection. So the thing about a T grind is if you're hitting off of hard pan, or you're hitting off of a mat, or you're indoors, and you can't physically move into the ground, you can't get into the ground, then a T grind's awesome because it moves that leading edge lower to the ground, so you can get underneath a golf ball. But even though this is firm turf, I mean, you know, can't feel it. You know, we can hit one straight up in the air with a 5612S, because when you're hitting off of grass, you can move into the ground, always. Like, I can dig a hole to China if I really want. So, I think having more bounce is definitely better than having less bounce. I've changed my opinion on that. I really thought that the T grind was like, oh, super versatile, I need this, you know, it's perfect, you know, I can hit so many different types of shots, but I can take this 56, you know, go to that back pin, and I can throw one straight up in the air, because nothing's stopping me from getting into the ground. So important to realize, you know, I think that's something that I always knew, but it's taken me more tournament golf to realize. The tendencies of most people, or at least myself for sure, is that when I get into a tournament, I always want to get more into the ground. I rarely do I want to fall back on it and try to help it up. But the only problem with that is with something with very low bounce, it wants to get very far into the ground. Versus something like this, you can get into the ground with it, but it doesn't allow you to go, you know, dig a trench, if you will. You know, but I mean, in terms of feel, awesome. In terms of, you know, soul grind, very solid. I mean, I think these are great wedges. Move on to the V here in a second. Like I mentioned earlier in the car, I think the value for money is top tier because, you know, you've got S400s and MCCs stock. So you're saving like $40 probably at least right off the bat. You know, you've got 3 great looking finishes. You've got 5 different soul grinds. You got 46 through 60 degree. You've got, you know, your signature Mizuno feel. You know, the groove patterning, to me, a lot of that is marketing stuff. I don't know enough about grooves. I'm a groove expert to be able to tell you whether, you know, these are special or not. But I mean, irregardless of the groove pattern, fresh wedges are always going to spin. So if you want fresh wedges and you're a Mizuno guy, I think these are going to be a great option. I can't really say anything bad about them. Let's just put it that way. I mean, you know, if I want to hit one a little bit lower, more drawy, you know, that's got topspin on it. Kind of a drawy topspin sort of chip. Almost made it. I can do a lot. And I can do a lot more with more bounce than I can do with less bounce. So, I mean, you know, if you're ever, I would say if you're ever in between, you know, deciding whether you want more or less bounce, always err on more. And then make your technique make it work. You know, so this is, you know, most people would say, oh my goodness, 12 degrees of bounce. You can't hit that up in the air. Why not? You know, we don't want to get that heel into the ground. So we want to, you know, the reason you might flub this is because you get that heel into the ground, then it grabs, right? So we'll take this, we'll get this toe down, and we'll open this face up and just throw it straight up in the air. 56 degree, 12 degrees of bounce, straight up. Always err on the side of more bounce, is what I would recommend. Moving on to the V grind. Now this is your high bounce with extreme versatility. In terms of looks, I don't think it looks much different than the 56. Something I want to mention here, real quickly, is if you go on Mizuno's website and you look at the specs of the T24s, very interesting. As a complement to the 5810V, they also have a 6012V. And if you think about that for a second, you're probably like, well, I don't really know what you're getting at. Well, if you take a wedge and you bend it strong, you take bounce away, you add offset. If you take a wedge and you bend it weak, you reduce offset, you also add bounce. So what I believe Mizuno is doing with the T24s, and like I'm not calling anybody out here, I don't really know if this is 100% true, just a guess, is they're making 59 11Vs and they're separating them into two piles, and they're taking the 60 12Vs and they're bending the 59 a degree weak, and then they're taking the 58s and bending them a degree strong. So you get 5810V and a 6012V. Because like looking at this in comparison to the 56, to me it looks like it has more offset. Just a little bit. It's slight. But it just looks like it has a hair more offset. And it would make sense, right? Because that means for the 54s and 56s, they make it a 55 and bending it a degree weak. And then for the 58, they're making a 59 and bending it a degree strong. So just something to think about. Not that it's a big deal, but to me, this looks like it has a skosh more offset. Just a skosh. But nonetheless. I mean, this V grind is phenomenal. And I mentioned earlier, I think Vokey messed up. I think they should offer this at retail. Mizuno jumped on the bandwagon. They're offering it at retail. And I think that is very smart. But yeah, let's move on to another part of the green. I'm kind of sick of hitting these chips. And yeah, we'll go from there. Right, guys, so now we've moved on to some thicker rough here. And once again, I'll try to give you some opinions. We got this 58 V grind still. We'll go to this pin and that pin because the camera doesn't really angle off properly to that pin over there. But I mean, this V grind is really good. You know, I can go more down on one and kind of get it running. Or, you know, I can go more left and high. You know, and I don't really have to worry about this thing digging into the ground. So, you know, I'll just take this, throw it down here, and just pop one out toward that back hole. Fortunately, it ran into that ball. But, you know, this back of my stand's popping down on it, getting one to kind of chase out there. Not a great shot, but I mean, it's 7 feet. You know, I can make those occasionally. But yeah, I mean, in terms of these T24s, very solid. Like I've mentioned already, I think this denim copper one belongs in a display case. There's no way I could game it. It's just too pretty, and it's already getting beat up, and that's bothering me. But yeah, I could definitely see myself gaming the soft white satin or the raw for sure. Really solid wedge release. Yeah, overall, guys, that's pretty much my testing for today. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments down below. I think in conclusion, those CB MBs are going to be really good. We'll have to decide on maybe going into a 5 and 6 MB. Not 100% sure yet, but we'll see. And then as far as shafts, we'll probably build up DG 120 X100s into the irons. And then as far as wedges, I'm gaming SM9s right now. I'm considering some different options, but the grinds will stay the same. You know, I'll try to play an S grind through the whole set. And if I end up playing Vokies, I'll probably play an 08F because I like a little bit less bounce in my irons. And then S grinds in the 56 and 60. But I'm considering like the T24s, I'm considering MG4s. Lots of different stuff. There's a lot of great golf clubs on the market right now. And then as far as the UB, I love the feel of it. Just need to go heavier and stiffer to get what I want out of it. In terms of loft of the 3-wood, the 3-wood I was hitting is my trusty TS3, up 1.5 degrees of loft and 3/4 of a degree flat. So I love that 3-wood. I'll definitely have to play a 3-wood around 16.5 degrees to get enough spin to get it to draw. And the driver, maybe we'll go to a 10. I have a 9 right now, but I might need a little bit more loft, especially if I go stiffer, just to make sure I get enough spin out of it. You know, but that's kind of the conclusion. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, like I said, drop a comment if you have any questions. If you did like the video, be sure to give it a like, you know, subscribe, and go ahead and follow us on our other social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Always some really cool content on those channels, giveaways, lots of great stuff. So we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.